Hello, everyone. So I'm supposed to be doing homework, but instead I have been sitting and thinking about control as a form of fear and the importance of trust and communication. And I don't know why exactly I started thinking about it, but once I did, I got on like a rabbit trail in my brain and I had some interesting thoughts that I wanted to share with you guys. So I made a chart, which is not surprising because I think very visually. So I will be showing you my chart. This is the chart that I made. And I think that a lot of times when we think about any type of relationship, whether that's a relationship with someone else or the relationship that you have with yourself, we want to protect that, right? Our instinct is to self protect or to protect people we love. And a big thing with protection is you either have to trust people, and if you don't trust people or you don't trust yourself, then you're going to try to control them or to control yourself. And so I just kind of wanted to talk a little bit about that. So, yeah. So, on this chart right here is yourself or other people that you're trying to protect. And this red circle is the boundaries that you put up in order to protect yourself or someone else. I'm just going to use someone else, and because it's easier to understand. So basically, if you don't trust them or you have a low communication with someone, you are going to have very firm boundaries with them. And it's most likely going to come in the form of control because you feel the need and the responsibility to make the decisions for them because you don't trust them to make them for themselves, or you don't trust them to not hurt themselves. And this comes out, I have some examples right here, but it comes out a lot in parenting, so I'll give an example for each of these. For example, I guess like a really easy one is if you have a curfew. Let's say, I guess it's kind of a stupid example, but like, let's say when you're like 17, you have a 9 p.m. curfew. Am I saying that that's a bad thing? No, but the question is, why are you doing that? Are you doing that because you don't trust the child to make good decisions for themselves? Probably. And so let's say instead you have a parent who doesn't have a curfew for their child, but they have high communication and high trust with their child, where they trust their child to make good decisions. And or when their child doesn't make a good decision, they have the ability to sit down with their child and have a conversation about, hey, I've noticed this pattern of you coming home really late. This is why I'm concerned about that. This is how I see that affecting you. Let's have a conversation about it. And you're actually building trust through that communication as well. And your child is probably more likely to honor the request that you have to come home at a reasonable time because you have high trust and high communication, which builds respect for one another. So that's an example for parenting. For the I put government because basically like the higher power distance you have, the more control is going to be involved. That's where the trust and communication comes in, right? Because the closer relationship that you have with someone, the more trust you will have with them. And that's just like across the board. That's neither like positive nor negative. That's just kind of how that works. So for example, in the government, there's a high power distance. Me as a citizen, I'm very disconnected from the government on a relational level. Like I'm not buddies with the president or anybody. So there's a more control in our relationship because I'm not going to like have a chat with them about how I can't pay my taxes this year, right? There's like laws in place for that, and that's high boundaries. So things like religion, Let's take, for example, this actually plays out a lot in religion, lots of different religions, but I'm Christian, so I'm going to be giving an example in Christianity. Something like we don't want to lust. That's like a virtue in Christianity, is not engaging in lust. But what happens is that people get really afraid, and then they're like, oh my gosh, like I can't lust. And so then they make like crazy rules for themselves that aren't in the Bible. It's just like a rule that you made for yourself because you're so afraid of needing to protect yourself. So that could be like clothes that you wear, or like not letting a guy and a girl hang out alone. That's a great example. So not letting a guy and a girl hang out alone. That's because you don't trust them to like actually care to want to make a good decision for themselves. Like, oh no, if they're by themselves, like something might happen. And it's like, are they like decent people? Like they're fine. That's an example. Or I don't know. I could go on and on about that one because I have a lot of personal examples for that. But another thing, like relationships, if you don't trust your partner or have high communication with your partner, then you are more likely to feel the need to control them, control what they do, who they talk to, where they go. So that's just like some examples of kind of what I'm talking about in this model that I have. And so what I wanted to encourage all of you with today, which is kind of what I was thinking about, is my next page, because I have two pictures. And, okay, so I can't read this upside down. Okay, so this is you or yourself, because I want to mention that actually a lot of these principles work for you as an individual as well. Like we have the need to protect feel the need to protect ourselves. So we set up like really unreasonable boundaries for ourselves because we don't even trust ourselves to make good decisions sometimes. Or you're so afraid of something that might happen that you just like completely avoid something that's neither good nor bad. It's just you have to deal with it in the moment. And I think that's more of the principle that I'm going for right now, is like, I don't think that a lot of the stuff that we block out of our lives is necessarily good nor bad. It's very situational. But people tend to live in a lot of fear and just like cut things out of their lives completely, which when it doesn't really make sense to, because if you have discernment, if you have trust, if you have communication with I'm going to use myself as an example because right now I'm talking about self, then you won't have to have this type of like relationship with the world. For example, oh my gosh, now I have to think of an example. Oh no, I can't think of one. Hold on. Okay, I thought of something. So when I first came to college, I didn't drink alcohol at all. Just not because I thought it was bad or anything like that, but I just wasn't around it ever. My mom can't drink because of medication that she's on, and my dad doesn't really drink a lot. He does sometimes, but no, like my grandparents don't really drink excessively ever, like, or not around me. So I was just not really ever around alcohol. But then when I was 16, I started working weddings. And so like every Friday and Saturday night for like 2 years, I was around 200 to 400 wildly drunk people all the time. So I went from like not being around alcohol at all to being around like hundreds of wasted people very regularly. And I was just like, I came to college and I was just like, I don't really know how I feel about this for myself yet, because I've only like seen people be absolutely crazy, or like heard horror stories of like really drunk people. And I haven't ever been in an environment to learn how to drink responsibly, so I feel very uncomfortable. And I didn't know anyone yet. I was like, I'm in a new environment with people I don't know, in an environment I'm not comfortable in, and with something I don't know a lot about. So I like didn't drink at all. That and then eventually over time, as I got to know people, I felt more comfortable in my environment. That changed, but it was because I had to trust myself. And that's where this model comes in, where instead of the red circle that's very like I'm not letting anything in. Oh my gosh, I missed explaining these arrows. Like this is like I'm not letting anything in that seems remotely scary. Like if it's even possibly anything near what I'm talking about, like what I'm afraid of, connected in any sort of way, I'm not doing it. And it's like, well, what if you just like saw like just see what happens and then deal with it when it happens. Like I don't know. Oh, I knew someone who once like had a friend. I knew a guy who had a friend who was a girl, and she was coming into town and wanted to get lunch just to catch up. And I remember him talking to me and being like, I'm not like, I want to get lunch with her because, you know, I want to hear what she's up to, but I don't know if I'm going to, because I don't want her to get the wrong idea that I have feelings for her, or that I might have feelings for her because I don't. And I was like, what? I sat there and I listened to this whole story about like if he was going to go to lunch with this person or not. And I was like, just go to lunch and like talk to each other and catch up, because you're so afraid of there being miscommunication, but you're not willing to communicate if that were to happen. And it's more of like, this model is basically saying like, dude, go to lunch. Like, it's not a big deal. She wants to hear what you're up to. And if the need arises for you to have a conversation, then do that. Trust her to, one, communicate with you, and trust yourself to be able to deal with it. Be an adult, have a conversation if you think you need to, but don't avoid the whole situation because you're so afraid that something might happen. That was a couple years ago, but that was just like an example I thought of. So here it's, these gaps represent like you're actually letting trust in to yourself, like with yourself or with someone else. You're actually trusting them to make a good decision, and or trusting that if they make a poor decision, you'll be able to communicate about it and it will be fine. And then down here, this I labeled this as validation. It was like the best thing I could come up with right now. Of like, if something good happens, then it's validating the fact that you are letting scary things into your life. You're like, oh, that actually wasn't bad. Okay, I'm fine. And this is like, oh no, this is leaning towards what I didn't want to happen. Let me communicate with myself or with someone else and figure out what needs to happen. Like, let's get on the same page, or set up a healthy boundary instead of an unhealthy boundary, because you need boundaries. Please have boundaries in your life, but I'm talking about having healthy boundaries instead of having unhealthy boundaries. So that's more of like what this is. When you're able to communicate and set up a healthy boundary, then that's good. That's really awesome. But you're not able to do these things until you have trust for yourself or for other people. And that's really important, because if you don't trust someone, but you want to protect them, then you're going to try to control them. And in order to trust someone, you have to communicate with them. And that's how you are protecting them or protecting yourself. It's all about really having healthy communication, having trust with one another, because like a lack of communication, as I said before, a lack of communication or a lack of trust is going to require you to control someone in order to protect them. And that's not really good. So I don't know. I was just thinking about this and I made this chart before I forgot about it. And I just thought it was fun. I don't know if it was fun for you, but it was fun for me because I like talking about this type of stuff. And if it was helpful for you, you're welcome, I guess. So have a great day. Okay, so I want to give an example of what I'm talking about when I say setting a healthy boundary that's still with the same outcome. Because the whole point of what I'm saying, I'm not saying that the outcome is bad. What you're trying to do comes from a place of wanting to protect, and that's good. That's really awesome. But it's the why behind what you're doing. And I think a lot of times we justify unhealthy boundaries because it's like, well, I'm doing what's best. I'm just trying to protect, I'm trying to guard my heart. I heard that one before. Or I'm trying to, protect so-and-so. I'm trying to protect my child or protect my loved one or protect our relationship or protect whatever it is that you're trying to protect, whether it's yourself or someone else or the relationship that you have. So I'm going to go back to my original example, which was setting a curfew for your child. It's like a basic thing, I don't think that that's a bad thing. I don't think that's neither good nor bad. It's why you're doing it. And if you're doing it because it's a replacement for healthy communication and trust, then that's a problem. But if you have healthy communication and trust, and you still set that boundary, I think that's fine. It's when it's like a replacement, almost like a cheap version of protection because there's no relationship. And I think that's what I'm trying to get at. So I'll just give an example of like a better way, I guess, that you could handle that. I'll just keep using the same example for the sake of this conversation, which this is about to end. It's like maybe you do have that curfew. I think I said like 9 p.m. Let's say you have that curfew of 9 p.m., but you keep an open line of communication where it's like your child knows like, if there's an exception, like if there's something like exceptionally fun happening that's like out of the ordinary, where it's like just like every day, please be home by 9:00. But it's like, let's say that their like friend is throwing a birthday party or like they're all going to see a movie. It's keeping an open line of communication and trust where it's like, hey mom or dad, like we're going to go do this thing. We're probably going to be out by like past 9. Is that okay? It's having a conversation about it. Is that okay? Like, why or why not? And it might be like, no, I don't think that's a good idea because you have a test in the morning. Or maybe it's like, yeah, that's fine. Please text me when you get back. I'm trying to keep it basic, but like, it's basically just keeping open communication where it's like, and it's very genuine and authentic. It's not just doing it to do it. It's like, oh no, my child, like, I want to hear what you have to say. Like, I want to hear your thoughts. Like, do you disagree with me? Why? Because it's also okay to disagree with people. Like, I feel like that's something that needs to be said. People are afraid to disagree because they don't know how to communicate. And when you actually take the time to learn how to communicate, it's actually not really a big deal when people disagree with you because you can talk about it. And even if you don't come to like a conclusion where you're both 100% agreeing with one another, you can at least come to a kind of like a what's the word I'm looking for? Not a collaboration, not a communication, not a consent. So if you don't like the examples I used, that's fine, because that's not the point of what I'm talking about. Try to think about what's the point of what I'm talking about. It's about having open communication and trust. If you don't agree with the examples I gave, please don't use that as a reason to throw away the actual heart of what I'm saying. which is just having healthy boundaries, and what does that mean and what does that look like, and when am I reacting in fear to self-protect or to protect people instead of pursuing relationship with them. And yeah, now I'm going to put my other hat on, which is low-key the same hat but also different, which is that I also talk a lot about theology, and I think this is a big issue in theology because we actually see God as our controller, which is not true and like absolutely not biblical when you read the whole story arc, which is relationship and identity and trust, and it's what it's all about. So